It is December 15th, Tuesday, December 15th. This is a special meeting of the Architectural Review Board. I'm going to go in and introduce all the board members one by one so we know who's on tonight. We've got Sean Brown, David Riley, Allison Hughes, Sherry Green, Alex Lopatinsky, Rebecca Morrison, Leslie McCauley, and David Humphrey. Those board members, that will be the order in which you are presenting tonight. I'll go through that again before each application. I'd like to also state 3 rules as far as holding special meetings and how we're going to conduct our business. 1, every time you speak, please introduce yourself. I'm Elizabeth Geiger, chairman of the meeting. Thank you. Second rule is when you are not speaking, please be on mute. Third rule is how we're going to go about these applications. We're going to have a presenter speak uninterrupted. It will be followed by commentary by each ARB member. Every ARB member will be, you know what? Who's caller number 2 and caller number? I need a couple of you guys to go on mute here. It's got a lot of background noise. So I got caller 2, caller 4, caller 3. One of you guys is bringing background noise on me. There's one off. Beautiful. Thanks, guys. Okay. My last point is about the structure of the meeting. Applicants will present uninterrupted. It will be followed by every ARB member one by one going on and and responding uninterrupted, after which point every ARB member goes through. The applicant will then have a chance to respond to all those comments. So again, so applicants, you'll listen to all the ARB members speak and then you'll address those questions one by one. During our meeting, we might have Marianne Castell join in. She's not online right now, but I just want to make note of that for the meeting record. All right. 1 second while I pull up my agenda here. Okay. To start off the night, we have ARB number 28. This is Organica. To bring you guys up to speed before I hand it over to the applicant, we reviewed Organica's application last month. They presented pin signs on their building as well as a pole sign and an internal fluorescent lamp, internal lit fluorescent lamp pole sign. We gave them a favorable report, but asked them to remove plant-based cafe from their signage, and we also asked them to add the street address somewhere. That said, I believe they're coming back to discuss. You know what, I'm just gonna turn it over. Whoever's presenting, please introduce yourself and please review your application for us one more time. Thanks.
Good evening, my name is Jamie Orozco. I am from Sign Design in Portchester, and I'm here representing Organica and 171 Post Road in Darien. As far as the awnings are, we're proposing just
They can pick you as like your character, but this is what you really like. I mean, you're not dialing it up.
Sorry, Jamie. This is Liz Geiger here. Caller 01, I need everyone to go on mute. Donna, Dean, I need you to go on mute, please.
Yes.
Caller 01, there's someone else on here that's not on mute. Please find yourself and go on mute. Jamie, I apologize about that. Please continue.
All right. All right, so like I was saying, the awnings are pre-existing right now. They're the striped ones for driftwood. Once we switch over, we would just be switching them to the fabric that was sent to you guys. It's Dixon number 7244, which is like the green you see in the drawings.
This is Liz Geiger here. Jamie, can you repeat the color and the number one more time? I'm sorry.
Dixon number 7244. And I believe sample was mailed to you guys.
This is Liz Geiger here, Jamie. And it's in this umbrella fabrics existing location, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, guys. Pretty simple. I'm going to run through the board numbers. I'm going to list the board members one by one. You guys listen to who you're following. I'm just going to have you continue one by one. Sean Brown, David Riley, Allison Hughes, Sherry Green, Alex Lopatinsky, Marianne Castell, if she hops on. Then it's Rebecca Morrison, Leslie McCauley, and Dave Humphrey. All right, start us off, Sean.
My first question is the color a sunbrella color?
Yes, it is.
That's my only question. Thanks. Otherwise, it looks good.
Right.
Dave Riley speaking. I have no exceptions. I think a little splash of green on the facade will look very nice. And it appears to be it's just replacing existing awning material. So no exceptions on that.
Correct. Correct. Framing is existing 1x1 tubing.
Guys, after Dave Riley, got Allison Hughes, Sherry Green, Alex Lopatinsky, Rebecca, Leslie, Dave Humphrey. I'm counting on you guys to go one by one, uninterrupted. Allison Hughes, you're up. When you can find the mute. Okay. Okay, you know what? We're going to skip you out. Okay,
I just got it. I got it. Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. No, I have no further comments. I think it looks well. Thank you.
Sherry Green, I think I'm next. Sherry Green, ARB. I think it looks terrific, and I like the fact that it matches the inside of the building as well. I think it looks great.
Alex Lopatinsky, I have no comments. Looks good.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB, I have no comments either. I think it looks fine.
Leslie McCauley, ARB, I have no comments. It looks good.
David Humphrey, ARB, no comments. Thanks.
All right, this is Liz Geiger here. Jamie, that's a favorable report for you. That's great. I'll write you a letter to confirm that. Jamie, do me one other favor before I send you on your way. What is your company that you're
I'm
with?
from Sign Design.
Sign Design. Okay, got it. All right, terrific. All right, Jamie, we'll send you a letter. Thank you for your time.
All right, guys. Thank you for your time. Have a blessed day and happy holidays.
All right, ARB members, moving on. I'm just going to do another reminder. Everyone's on mute. Sorry, Liz Geiger speaking. Another reminder, everyone's on mute when you're not talking. Introduce yourself every time you speak. And when ARB members are commenting, you're not to ask the presenter questions. You provide questions, you keep going with your commentary. The applicants are not going to respond to your questions until we've gone through the entire board. This will just keep things moving along. Otherwise, the meetings take a little longer than we need. Okay, applicant, we got ARB number 21 continued coming up here, 21-2020. This is the Corbin District Signage Program. Since these guys are rookies, not rookies, are, senior residences, I'll let Kate take the lead and introduce herself. A very brief recap of the
Sure. My name is Kate Perez and I'm with Baywater Properties. And David Genovese may join shortly. And we're here to talk about the Corbin signage package and the updates that were made from the original presentation. And thank you to the board for holding, a special meeting on the signage package when we last spoke, and for the detailed feedback. It was very helpful in kind of updating this, and hopefully we're headed in the right direction. So I can share my screen. I hope everybody has a hard copy or a digital copy of this. But I can sort of run through the updates. Any updates to the original package are highlighted in yellow. So, anything that's not highlighted is kind of what you've reviewed in the past. So we can just kind of cruise through, and, I think that comments sort of fell into two buckets of relatively straightforward technical comments like sign height, setting a maximum, kind of specifics about how a blade sign is attached to the building, and then the sort of bigger picture, how does lighting and sign character tie into each building? So we can kind of run through these and just talk about each. Sorry, hold on one second. Here we go. Sorry, I'm just trying to minimize my go-to so I can actually see the screen. There we go. So the introduction is pretty much the same. To get into the inline tenants, it has been added to the text for inline of 16 inches. And under the town regulations, I believe the maximum is 20 inches, but for some of these smaller inline tenants, 16 inches is probably more appropriate. And then there was a question about if a facade doesn't have a public entrance, because the goal of this signage program is to kind of help out those tenants who have two front facades that may have tenant entrances. So this kind of adds a note that if there is not a public entrance on one of those facades, the sign will be limited in size to something that will help, a delivery person, employees, be able to see the signage when they're parking, but not, such a large sign that would imply that there's a public entrance there. On awnings, I sort of pulled awnings into a separate page and kind of went through the details there, but awning signs do count towards the allowable, signage area per tenant. And then just specifying that blade signs should be attached with a bracket similar to what we see around downtown Darien today in some of those successful examples of blade signs. This example updates, an inline tenant to show that smaller, roughly 4 square foot indication sign if there is not a visitor entrance on the retail front. And then jumping over to corner tenants, the original package noted 3 wall signs, and we've updated that to 1 per facade up to a maximum of 3, as some corner tenants only have 2 facades, and it wouldn't be appropriate to allow 3 signs on a 2 facade corner tenant.
Hey, Kate.
The height is now has a maximum limit of 20.
Kate, it's Liz Geiger here. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Inches.
Kate?
Again, awnings count towards the square footage. And the same note on blade signs. And this
ARB members, this is Liz Geiger. Is anyone else having a hard time hearing Kate? Can you
is
raise
an
it?
example of a corner tenant that does only have the 2 public facades. So
Stop! Kate, stop!
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Liz, she keeps blacking out.
The update kind of helps cater to tenants like this.
Kate?
And an example of a 3-sided corner tenant.
All right, ARB members, if I tell I can get Kate's attention, she's highlighted in yellow all the changes here.
And this is one retailer in particular we're speaking to that.
Now we have to fix it.
That could potentially have 3, entrances
Hey, Fred,
on each of the 3 corner, 3 facades.
Fred, are you online? If I could get you to pause Kate's screen share. I'm gonna.
Yeah, 1 minute, Liz.
Yes. Hi, Fred. Thank you. I gotta pause Kate. I gotta get her out of there. I gotta stop her and have her come back on.
Watch it. It was right there.
Liz Geiger Here, Kate, can you hear me? Kate, can you hear me?
Hold on, I'm gonna dismiss her and kick her out of the meeting, and then she'll be able to come back on.
Okay.
And sort of change. Sorry, can you hear me?
Kate, it's Liz Geiger here. We have not been able to hear you for about 5 minutes. Can you hear us, Kate?
No.
This is like just not the technical night. Kate, we're gonna boot you out of here. ARB members, I apologize. It's been a rough technical night already. I'm so sorry. Kate, when you can hear us, let us know.
Well, while we're waiting, I want to comment on Dave Keating's hat.
Make sure you state your name before you speak. We still are on.
Oh, Sean, this is Sean. Dave, I totally approve of your hat.
This is Dave. Well, thank you, Sean. I'm glad that you do approve of my hat.
Okay, I didn't see you. This is Liz Geiger. I'd like to know if the board would like to give a favorable report on Dave's hat or an unfavorable report.
Good.
Favorable.
All right.
Favorable report.
Thumbs up all around. Thank you.
Thumbs up.
Hey, this is Sean. Dave, it sure beats wearing a tie, doesn't it?
It sure does. Yep.
Hey, Fred, this is Sean. Would it help on this go-to meeting if I dropped off and dialed in by phone to save some bandwidth?
I don't think it would make a difference, Sean.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Kate Perez from Baywater is here. I apologize. I just got kicked off of my internet for some reason. I'm running with the PDF right now. I apologize for that. Hold on.
Hey, Kate, this is Liz Geiger. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You are still kind of going in and out. You have a very, it's difficult to hear you. And your whole presentation, we had lost you. I can't hear you now, in fact.
Okay.
There we go. I was trying to stop you, but you obviously weren't looking at me. We kicked you off because we weren't getting any feedback from you. We couldn't hear you.
Okay.
I've texted you offline. You can look at my the chat on the side to make sure if we don't hear you or not. But it sounds like you good.
Okay. Give me 1 minute. I'm going to try to go to a place with a better connection, and let me see if this works.
Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to ask. I've got Humphrey Phone, Mary Castell, and Dave Keating all on off mute. I'm going to have you guys go on mute unless you got something to comment.
My phone's on mute, so I see where you have David Humphrey. It doesn't look like it's updating when I'm on mute, so I'm going to go on mute now.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. ARB members, Liz Geiger here. I apologize. I can't move this meeting forward. I can't jump to the next applicant at this point. I don't even think I guess they're on, but we need to, let's give this applicant about 3 more minutes, see if they can get their technical stuff on. If not, we'll move on. I see Mr. Gleason signed on, so we could possibly jump to the next application if Kate needs to figure out some long-term technical issues here. So let's give this 3 more minutes.
Hi, just trying one more time. Is this a better connection?
It's Liz Geiger here, Kate. Yeah, that is better, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so Kate, let's bring you back up. You were doing a great job highlighting just the changes. I think we left you on banners.
Okay.
On awnings.
Yes.
So Fred can share your screen one more time. And if something happens, do you have the chat up on your screen? Sidebar, I can always give you a heads up if we lose you again.
I will keep an eye on the screen, and I apologize for not doing that before, but if I see you wave, I'll know I'm not in good shape.
All right, sometimes I just like to wave the applicants in general, so it's confusing, but okay. I won't wave in general.
Okay, so I think where I left off was anchor tenants. Did you hear me up to that point? Is that where we can pick up?
We left you, Liz Geiger here. Kate, make sure you announce your name every time you speak for me, please. We left you at awnings. I think that's actually pretty much the last that I heard clearly.
Okay. Okay. So
I'm going to have you make up here, so work fast.
Yes. Okay. So we were probably on corner tenants in that case. So moving fast, we updated. What's that?
Introduce yourself for us one more time.
This is Kate Perez from Baywater. So just moving fast through corner tenants, we updated the number of wall signs to 1 per facade up to a maximum of 3 signs rather than 3. We limited the text height to 20 inches and there was no limit in the original proposal. And awning signs count towards the allowable square footage. And blade signs should be treated with a bracket element similar to examples in downtown Darien. Jumping to anchor tenants, or I apologize, Bank of America was the next sort of update. And on blade signs and brackets, you know, on the same note, Bank of America took a pass at the blade sign with a simple bracket rather than directly attached to the building. And they tried to sort of be in keeping with some of the successful examples around town. So we can talk about, and I'm interested in your thoughts about that sign in particular. Anchor tenants, we reduced the number of signs from 4 to 3, also limiting the text size to 20 inches or 24 inches if it's more than 100 feet from a public road. And the same notes on awning signs, they'll count towards square footage, and blade signs shall be treated as a simple bracket. Just moving forward, nothing changed on artwork. So on page 19, we just added a note that addresses should be clearly marked, and some more details on the awning requirements. So a 7-foot clearance, the content, you know, being limited to the business name, and a limit in height and square footage on awnings. You know, just to get a little bit more specific about what people can and can't put on an awning sign. And then, you know, getting into
Liz Geiger, yep. Would you like to do your share screen again for us, or are you?
Yeah, hold on just one second.
You don't have to. We can keep going. But we all have the documents here. But if you have the access.
Yep. I will try. I apologize. I think my connection where I am at home is just not working super well. I'm gonna log in on the side as we continue and see if I can pull it back up.
Okay. You know what? This guy right here. Okay, keep going. I think we all are. I just ask ARB members to reference your applications in person or the ones you have visually online. It should be easy enough.
Yep. And the one online is the same. You know, nothing has changed in what we're reviewing now. So getting into lighting, you know, I think there was a desire from the board to get a little bit more specific on lighting design. And what we've tried to do here is to kind of scope out the types of light fixtures that can be used, and also add some performance criteria. So, you know, I think we see a lot of examples of gooseneck lamps around town, and traditional lanterns in, you know, metal finishes, blacks, whites, you know, relatively sort of simple and straightforward lighting. And we feel that those types of fixtures would be appropriate for the project and, you know, with the base building light fixtures. And, you know, the other piece of this is making sure that lighting is directed at the facade, not into the public way. And making sure that the fixture is complementing the architecture of the individual building. And, you know, each of the buildings has a slightly different character. So sort of making sure that that the fixtures are in line with each building. And on the next page, we got a little bit more detailed about materials and you know, speaking to the types of materials that can be used and colors. So we added this note that colors should be limited to the corporate branding and marketing of the company or of the tenant. And also that sign materials should complement the architecture of each building. Again, each one is a little bit different, and we want to make sure that the sign, you know, is kind of in harmony with the architectural style. And I think, you know, the lighting and the materials were, you know, really the toughest ones and sort of the less technical ones to address. But I think that really covers the extent of the changes. And I look forward to your comments. I'm going to pull the presentation up here too. Thank you.
Liz Geiger here. Kate, that's great. I know you got technical difficulties. That can really put you in a frazzle. You did a great job covering those. And you did a great job actually setting up the presentation and highlighting in yellow those aspects which were new and addressed our previous meetings comments. So we really appreciate it, Kate. You're doing a great job. So we're going to go through here. ARB members, we're each going to comment one by one. Kate is not going to respond until everyone has gone through. She's going to take notes and then she's going to respond all at once. ARB, we've got 15 minutes top to make comments here, so be quick and succinct, and then we're going to give Kate 10 minutes to respond to us. All right, so the order, I'm going to have you guys go one by one, queuing yourself. We've got Sean Brown, David Riley, Allison Hughes, Sherry Green, Alex Lopatinsky, Marion Castell, Rebecca Morrison, Leslie McCauley, and Dave Humphrey. All right, take it away, Sean.
Sean Brown, ARB. Kate, I have just two comments. The first is my always favorite is just to make sure that every tenant has an address number designating their space. You did mention it earlier, but I just want to make sure that it's every tenant door that or window that has the number. And number two, I was reading through on page 20 of the revised signage plan, and you made a comment about gooseneck lamps. And you're not mentioning them here. So my assumption is that there is no plan for gooseneck lighting of the signage. I just want to confirm that's correct. That's my comments. Thank you.
All right, Dave Riley, ARB. I would like to compliment you on addressing all the comments from the last meeting. I think they're well thought out and well addressed. And with regards to the Bank of America revision to their blade sign, I think that is in the direction that we were looking, and I think that will complement the architecture and also be more harmonious with the intent of the blade signs throughout the development. Beyond that, I really think that it's going in the right direction. And aside from when and if we get into more specifics as the project is developed, I really don't see any other reason to question the revisions that have been done. So thanks.
Allison Hughes, ARB member. I think the Bank of America blade sign, the new design is much improved. Kate, I'm wondering if I heard you right that you said a tenant could have 2 blade signs per building. I thought I heard that, but I may be wrong. Also on the sign that designates the name of the business for deliveries, et cetera. I forget what you referred to that as, but I'd like to know a little more specific about that. What size, if it was limited in size or any other way. That's it. Thank you.
Sherry Green, ARB. Thank you, Kate, for such a wonderful presentation. It was very clear. And I also want to just reiterate the improvement for the Bank of America signs. I think we're going in the right direction. It's huge improvement. Thank you.
Alex Lopatinsky, ARB. Kate, I want to compliment you as well on the presentation. I just have two questions for clarification. I think because we didn't have the prop of the deck while you were explaining things, I just want to better understand. On page 8, the tenants that do not have a public entrance, I presume you mean public entrance on the street side, that's where the limited sign of 4 square feet would be attached. That's one question. The other question is for the anchor tenants where you have 2 signs, you also are allowing logo or branding on the awnings as well. So potentially that anchor tenant could have up to, I don't have the visual in front of me, another 4 or 5 opportunities for signage. I just want to make sure that that's the intent. And that's it for me. Thank you. All the other questions I had previously were addressed. Well done.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB member. The only question, Kate, I have for you is regarding also the awnings. Obviously, if it was a restaurant or eating facility, that awning, I'm assuming, would be increased or could be retractable. And it doesn't really specify if that's the case, how that would be treated and the size of that. And that's it.
Leslie McCauley, ARB. Great job, Kate. And all of my questions have been asked. Thank you.
David Humphrey here. Yeah, all my questions and comments were covered. Thank you. Nicely done.
All right, Liz Geiger here. I have small comments. I want to say, Kate, I support the new design of the Bank of America sign. Sounds like the whole board does. So you got a favorable report to report back to them on. In the meantime, I know you wanted to move forward with them. I also want to say that I love your addition to the lighting section of this presentation, saying that it will mirror the style of the building. I think that was brought up by some of our board members last time, particularly Marion Costello. I thought that was a really astute observation, and I'm glad you guys addressed it, and also addressed that the lighting for the building would be cast on the facade and not outward or upward. I do have one small critique or idea that it might just be me. Sounds like the rest of the board did not comment on this, so it might not be an issue. I thought the inline tenant's use of being able to have 2 signs plus a blade sign seemed a little bit excessive. I personally would recommend 2 signs for inline tenants, whether one of those be a blade sign, one be a wall, or 2 blade signs and nothing else. But I feel like 2 would be sufficient for inline tenants. And I'll put that out to the board if anyone else wants to further comment that on later. So Kate, we'll leave it to you. It's 7:08. I'll give you 10 minutes or less to give us a response to all our questions, and then we could put it back to the board for any final wrap-up questions.
Great, thank you. This is Kate Perez with Baywater Properties. So I will run down the list, and thank you. I appreciate the comments. This is very helpful. So on tenant addresses, Sean, I'll make sure that this is clear in the document. I think we have a general note that all tenants shall have a street address, clearly on the facade. And, just as a matter of practice, we'll also make sure that happens for logistics and mail and everything else. So on page 19, I think that applies to each tenant type, and that every tenant should have that address. Jumping to the comment about gooseneck lamps. So on light fixtures, the idea in sort of crafting some lighting options for tenants to select from. The idea is that gooseneck lamps, of a black, a white, metallic type finishes, or a traditional lantern of the same type of finishes would be the options that the tenants could choose from. And in looking around town, to be honest, those are the types of light fixtures I see on the post road that most tenants have. So You know, we also feel like repeating those types will kind of stitch the project into the downtown. On Bank of America, thank you. You know, we're excited in the, you know, on the direction of the sign and where it ended up. So we're looking forward to that sign and appreciate your guidance on that. You know, I think it's going to be a much more, you know, successful for your comments. So we'll keep moving with them on that front. And then on inline tenants, on page 8. So just to clarify the inline tenant number of signs and sort of where they can face, the particular tenant on page 8 has a facade facing Corbin Drive, which, you know, in this example, I'm assuming would be their front door sort of facing the road. And if that tenant had a secondary door facing the parking lot, the shared parking lot behind, that would be the instance where if that were not a visitor entrance, a public entrance facing the parking lot, where that signage would then be 4 square feet. If a tenant had 2, you know, quote unquote public entrances where visitors could come in either side to shop, then they would be allowed, you know, equal signs on each side. So it's just a way to sort of limit the sign if, you know, it's truly just a service entrance, you know, for employees' use. And, you know, Liz, I'll jump to your comment also because it's sort of on the same topic of inline tenants and, you know, a 2 sign maximum versus blade sign. So the way this is written now, a tenant is allowed 2 signs, a smaller sign if there's not a second public entrance, and they are actually allowed 2 blade signs. You know, the reason that we propose that is we really want to encourage blade signs because, you know, just as you're walking down the sidewalk and with the height and scale of the buildings, it's really nice to have that sort of intermediate layer along with the street furniture and the trees. And, you know, we think it's sort of a nice way to bring sort of a pedestrian scale to the retail storefronts. And so the reason we have those outside of the 2 allotted signs is honestly to encourage tenants to take advantage of them. I think a lot of people would favor a wall sign over a blade sign. And, you know, we're sort of just trying to encourage the use of blade signs. So that's the thinking behind it. But, you know, I'd like your feedback on that. I realize some of the inline tenants, you know, they do have the 2 fronts, and we just thought it would be sort of a nice character to have a blade sign facing the road and also a blade sign facing the public plaza or parking area. And then jumping to anchor tenants and the example which shows awnings, awning signage. The anchor tenant example has a couple of wall signs that fit within the allotted square footage area. And the anchor signs, you know, Alex, I think you make a good point that the anchor signs, the quantity is not covered by the wall signs. And, you know, I think that this would be one example of something where if someone wanted to put a logo on each of the awning signs and it fell within their allotted square footage, that would probably be something that we would bring back to ARB. Or if you think there's a way to sort of cover that in this package, I can also, you know, think through how to, you know, maybe limit the quantity of awning signs. But, you know, that's a pretty bold statement to have a logo on each of the awnings. And, you know, our thinking is that if there's something that is unusual or bold such as that, we will be bringing applications back to ARB for review, especially for these anchor tenants who might, want to do something that's lit or, again, it's sort of bold or unusual. And on awnings and retractable, how would that be treated? A retractable awning would have to be brought back through ARB because the way this signage package is written, it defaults to the town awning requirements of 7 feet and extending no more than 3 feet into the public way. And so a retractable awning would be a special circumstance that we would come back to ARB for. And I'm just running down the list. I think that covers it. If I missed anything, please tell me. And I will turn it back over to the board.
Liz Geiger here, Chairman. Thank you, Kate. You do such a great job. Fred, we can take away Kate's brief there. Kate, you can eliminate that. And possibly go on. I need, Marianne, I need you to go on mute, possibly. Sorry about that, Marianne. All right, let's go here, Kate. That's great. We have less than 5 minutes here to wrap this up. Any ARB members, show of hands, any other comments you want to make to Kate's response to our comments here? If I do a show of hands, okay, Rebecca, I'll start with you.
Kate, is the if they have a logo on the awning, is it limited to the flap? That's my question.
This is Kate Perez from Baywater. We didn't specify, but I think in our experience and Baywater's experience with tenants, I've only seen logos or signage, written on the flap. If that's something that the board is interested in, we can be more specific about that.
It just seems like if you limited it to the flap and you, like, even if it was a retractable awning, if you specified even the flap size and you limited it to the flap and like centered on something, then there'd be less ambiguity about what exactly would be proposed. But maybe I'm wrong. That's it.
Yep. No, this is Kate Perez from Baywater. I hear you, and I'm happy to kind of add a note to that effect of sort of limiting signage to the flap. And, again, I think that's sort of what tenants are generally looking for, so that's fine by me.
Liz Geiger here. Okay, Alex Lopatowski. Guys, make sure you introduce yourselves every time you speak.
Alex Lopatinsky, ARB. Kate, thank you for answering my question. I think that I understand you don't want to limit your tenants' ability to advertise, particularly the anchor tenants. So perhaps instead of giving any limitation, that there is some caveat that should they want to take advantage of putting their branding or logos on all the awnings, that would trigger a review with us. And that then it still gives them the opportunity to slice and dice how they want to do their signage, but gives us the opportunity to just double check it, right? See what it wants to be and give us a chance to look at it.
This is Kate Perez with Baywater. Absolutely, I think that's a good plan. Anything that would be repeated on a lot of awnings is going to be bold and is going to be seen repeatedly, and I think that's totally fine. We're happy bringing, if somebody wants branding on every awning, we're happy to bring that back in front of ARB.
Liz Geiger here. Is there anyone else in the ARB that wants to make additional? Sean Brown, go ahead.
Sean Brown, ARB. I'll just make a statement for the ARB and others listening. I am not a fan of the gooseneck lamps. And part of the reason is I think that electricians don't install them properly. The picture on page 7, the lamps are raised high enough over the sign, but the shadows from the sunlight destroy the image of the actual signage. And at night, they hang down over signs when electricians don't put them in. So my comment to the signage package is that if gooseneck lamps are going to be permitted, that they need to be mounted high enough over the sign so they do not infringe upon the view of the signage. The ones that are located, the bottom picture of West Elm on page 7 shows the goosenecks mounted high enough, but in most cases in Darien, I would tell you that the gooseneck lamps are not mounted properly. So, I just recommend that you mount them properly if you're going to use them at all.
This guy right here, thank you, Sean. Perfect. Allison Hughes.
Allison Hughes, ARB. I think limiting the logo to the flap would be a very good idea for your purposes. We had one instance where Panera, for instance, I don't know if anybody remembers their awning, but they had that spray of wheat on the awning, and it looked nice, but I think to be able to review something like that would be important. That's it.
All right, Liz Geiger here. Final call, ARB members. I think we're good. Okay, Kate, let's summarize here. You have a couple minor comments that you could add into your bracket, into your deck, pardon me. This is fantastic. I think we did 3 rounds and you've got a favorable report for your signage program for Corbin District. That is huge. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you and Mr. Genovese. All right, drinks on David Genovese. That's on record. I'm going to leave it to you, Kate Perez, to make those adjustments, send a final document through David Keating and P&Z that he can share with us. So we could just kind of look at having our records, and then we'll look forward to drinks on you guys at some point.
In the Corbin district when it's done.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wear Dave Keating's Santa hat.
Good. Well, this is Dave Keating. You can borrow it, Dave, when you want to. But I want to make it clear that the policy to adopt this program really rests with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So this is a recommendation from the ARB to the Planning and Zoning Commission to adopt this policy. It won't become official until the Planning and Zoning Commission acts on it. And that will probably be in January, maybe February.
Great.
Liz Geiger, thanks, Dave, for clarifying that for us. We appreciate that. All right, guys, go. We'll be in touch, hopefully.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time. Okay. All right, ARB members, moving on here. We've got 45 minutes left exactly to wrap up this meeting. So we have ARB number 27, 2020 continued here. It's the presentation of BMW Darien. Before I go into the actual application work here, I've got 2 things I want to step back on as general meeting practices. One, it's a distinction to know here that Darien, that our Architectural Review Board meetings are open to the public, but they're not public hearing. That distinction is important because at a public hearing, there's a dialogue between outside opinion and not just the applicants and the board members. Here at the ARB, we allow people outside the board and the applicants to listen into our meetings. We love it, we welcome it, but those people are not allowed to comment. There have been a number of letters submitted for this particular application. I know all our ARB members have done their homework, they've done the research. We are up to date on those letters. We hear you guys, we see you. We are not going to be commenting or addressing on those, and no one from that side will be able to speak to those. Similarly, for the BMW side, Mr. Gleason, if you're presenting, I don't want you guys addressing those letters either, unless there's something in those letters that's dictated your guide, your designing principles, that influences a decision you've made. Then of course, we'd love to hear it as far as it pertains to the architectural and the aesthetics of the site, the landscaping, and the lighting. So I just wanted to make that part clear. The second part of that is, actually a totally separate matter, is I actually have a personal relationship with some people from Middlesex Commons. So we're all professionals here, but that being the case, I want to be super clear that there is no interference in this application. So I am going to remove myself from the dialogue tonight and any ongoing decisions here that are made about the application. And board member David Humphrey is going to step up and serve as vice chair for this application. So Dave, I'm going to hand it over to you and I'll let you give BMW and Mr. Gleason's team the time limitations for this presentation and how it will run. So thanks, guys. I'll stay on mic, but I'm going to go on mute and I'm not going to comment until Dave sums it up for us. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Liz. David Humphrey here, acting as Vice Chair tonight for this application, as Liz mentioned. So that was a detailed summary as far as what this application is. It's a continuation from last month. So I think we'll just jump right into it. We'll keep roughly the same timeline as we did for the previous application. Let's do roughly 10 minutes for BMW to present their application tonight, updates from last month, and then we'll run through roughly 15 minutes for the board members to provide comments, 10 minutes for a response from BMW. Keeping in mind, we're going to run through all of the board members one by one. BMW can take notes and then respond all at once after that, and then additional 10 minutes to follow up. So with that, whoever is presenting from BMW, go ahead.
All right, I'll start. It's Wilder Gleason. Mike Kozlowski is on board with us at some point. Yeah, that's great, Mike, for sharing the screen. Can you all see that? That's the existing site plan. If you can blow that up, that would be great. Liz, I really appreciate your recusing yourself. I would just ask if there's anyone else who feels they have a conflict because they either live there or they have a relative who lives there, I would ask you to consider doing likewise. And if not, if I don't hear any comments on that, I'll assume that everyone feels they're comfortable opining on this and have no apparent conflict of interest. Liz, I do appreciate your saying that the focus here is on architectural, aesthetics, lighting, and landscaping. Those are the factors we intend to address. Noise, traffic, parking, those are planning and zoning commissions. Rooftop parking is a planning and zoning commission. I won't get into it. You guys don't have jurisdiction over those things. They get dealt with by the planning and zoning commission. So I do think that there's been some misunderstanding because we have submitted lighting plans that show the existing lighting and the photometrics of the proposed lighting, and the metrics. The existing lighting shows documents that are visible lights, lights that could be visible from the condominiums right now, and that light migrates from our site onto the condominium site. And the photometrics of the new land lighting plan, once we're all done, document that those conditions will not exist. You will not be able to see any of the light fixtures on our property from the condominiums, and you will not have any light migrating from our site onto the condominiums. We got your letter of November 19th. We've submitted a bunch of plans, and I think Mike can take you through this and present in response, and he will be followed by our landscape architect and lighting person, Katie Haas, because we have tweaked the landscape plan in light of the comments you made, and we provided greater detail in terms of the car wash building and how it's going to match and work with the proposed new buildings. Thanks. So Mike, if you'll take it away.
Thank you, Wilder. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for hearing us tonight. Like last time, I'm going to run through this as quickly as I can, but just to highlight the quick things.
If you don't mind just introducing yourself.
I'm sorry. Yes, Mike with Claris Construction on behalf of BMW Darien. I apologize. Again, a couple of the key components that we took away from last month's hearing, showing the massing as a whole. So you're going to see a couple new renderings added to this presentation that show bird's eye views from the entire site. You're going to see a little bit more views from our neighbors on what they see. Again, these are artistic renderings. They're not actual. They're generated in the computer. You're going to see a little bit more detail on our screening on what we did on the rooftop parking, and then you're going to see a little bit more detail or actually an image of the car wash, and you'll see how that's reflected from views from the showroom and from the back of the building. So I'm going to quickly run through them. If I go too quickly, please stop me. I have a tendency to do so. So again, here we have a couple of the bird's eye views that you might not have seen from the last time. This is overall of the site. We have Middlesex condos here on the bottom half of this rendering. We have our service building. Hold on one second, my lights just went out in here. We have our showroom up here that is that currently extends pretty much down the length of this retaining wall between the town property here, and then we have Whole Foods over here just to orient ourselves. The back here is another bird's eye of the service parking here that we're talking about. I think this does a good job of illustrating some landscaping that's going to be discussed later by Katie, and a section that we've done through here to show the heights, but it kind of gives you an idea of the vegetation that's going in here, and how we hope that will help screen between our neighbors to the Middlesex condos. This is the back corner of the site, kind of showing our little complex here. We have our showroom building up here, the back side of that, our new addition of the architecture that you didn't see the last time, the car wash, and then the front of the service building. Again, not modeled here is the Whole Foods building, but that's kind of where my cursor is right here. And then we have the trees that are again, representative of what's there today. We went through this last time, so I'm going to skip through the showroom plans and the elevations. I'll quickly look at the perspectives because they're just slightly different because we have the car wash building. This first rendering you see here is from the front corner of the showroom building. This is the sales along the property line of Whole Foods. You can see the retaining wall here that's currently there that we're going to maintain, and then the car wash here in the distance. Again, a little bit more of a bird's eye view right along the property line. Whole Foods over here, our showroom building here, car wash, and our service in the back. And then back here we have the what is the addition after we demo some work on the existing building, and then the car wash again over here to the right. These are the finishes of the showroom that we talked about the last time. And then these are images specific to the car wash. Again, the corporate mandates the certain look for the showroom. That's customer touch points, that's sales drop off. So between Mini and BMW, we have the white, the black, the ECM, and all those complementary colors there. We wanted to go a little more neutral, play off of that a little bit for our service building, and we use those finishes for our car wash building. So we have an entrance here, exit on the other side. Every time a car gets serviced, it will be cleaned here. We have a nice ground face block. It's not just a normal cinder block, it's a ground face block that we have a better image of for you. The Trespa panels above with the black ACM as well to accent that. Again, this is just another view from the back side of the showroom looking towards the service. You can see the windows here we added and the architectural awnings that are complementary of what we have on the service building. Service floor plan, again, service lifts down below where we had more than 12 or so, 15 doors of service before in the old building. Now we only have 2 on the sides and 6 across the front here that are opposite of the condos. So it's really facing more towards the center of the site. We're hoping that that does reduce on the noise that travels away from the site because we're containing it within this one large structure. Again, up top here, we have our parking, rooftop parking that you'll see a little bit in the bird's eye views a little bit more, and then the architectural elevations. Front of the building, these are similar to what you saw the last time. I'm just going to quickly go through them. It's ground face block, ACM, Trespa panel, which is a commercial product, but it is designed to look like residential siding. In fact, it's used on a lot of residential projects, mostly modern ones, but it does cross the lines between commercial and residential materials. Front corner here, this is the end of the Whole Foods parking lot, kind of looking at our building. You can see just a little bit of the peaks of our neighbors, but yeah, you can't really see many of the cars, and this is at a higher elevation. And then it's not till we go to a bird's eye, well, unless you're a bird or flying a drone, this is the view you'd see of the parking. And this is where we can start to see a lot of the height here we have of the screening. We have 8 feet tall. The first 42 inches is going to be framed with walls. Actually, the whole thing is now framed because we have no openings in it. So first 42 inches matches the lower gray Trespa panels in the backside, and then the top half would be a more of a wood tone Trespa panel, which I'll show you those samples again. These are a couple other views. This is from the backside of the service parking lot. You can see that the cars are well below the screening here. Again, and then over here, this is the ramp coming up here on the left, and then the cars by the screening. So it's a solid wall meant to look kind of like a fence, more of a residential kind of fence, but solid. You can't see through it, light can't come through it. So hopefully those give a good idea. And then this one, as we move into some neighbor renderings, this shows a lot of the vegetation in here that we're proposing, along with the existing plantings that are beyond this fence behind us. And as we move forward here, so these are a couple of the neighbor renderings that are mostly from the 3 condos to the top part of the Middlesex condos that you would be able to see. So we have this from a view from one of our neighbors. We have this from another view. Again, architectural renderings. They're not realistic. Obviously the project's not built, so this is generated in the computer. And then these two are from where the other vantage points you would get behind the garages of the condo owners. So here you could see faintly the screening through the vegetation. Here is the most open spot between 2 of the garages. There's currently arborvitae there. There's a fence that's about 8 feet tall, and then you have our building behind it. Again, finishes that we have, we got a better picture of the ground-based block. Hopefully this helps describe what we're doing there a little bit better. The Trespa panels, the 2 contrasting ones, and then the aluminum that is the trim color. I'm going to move on to the planting plan. Hopefully I didn't rush through that. If you have questions, look forward to hearing, but I'm going to hand it off to Katie Haas, please.
Hi, I'm Katie Haas, landscape architect from William Kenny Associates, representing BMW. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up? Yeah, just to check. Great. In response to the letter that was provided, we reviewed and consulted the commercial design guidelines for the landscape, parking, and street trees. Our goal with the plant selection for the site was to propose a majority native plant palette. So we updated the parking trees, which are located along the west and south of the proposed service building, to match native plants that are listed on the design guidelines. Due to the goal of having a majority native plant palette, we chose native flowering dogwood trees to be planted along Ledge Road. Though these trees were not specifically listed on the street tree list, their color and height is consistent with the non-native recommended flowering trees. There are also overhead wires in this location. So by planting the flowering trees, it will avoid future conflict with and improving the frontage of Ledge Road. Along the northern property boundary near Middlesex Commons, we are planting 6 Norway spruce and 29 green giant arborvitae. Where the green giant arborvitae were selected to link the existing screening hedge, which is on Middlesex Commons property, to aesthetically connect the properties. The arborvitae trees are very fast growing and can get to 2 to 3 feet per year, also a reason why we selected those trees. In addition to the screening trees on Middlesex Commons, in addition to the screening trees we're also proposing screening trees on Middlesex Commons property to expand their existing screening hedge in front of the windows that face the proposed service building, which I will get to in a minute. If you go to the next slide, Mike, please. So you can skip over. This is just our planting details, which we've included with the application, as well as maintenance notes and planting notes. If you can continue to the next slide, please. This is an existing photo that was taken about a year ago of our northern property boundary and facing north toward Middlesex Commons. As you can see on the left-hand side of the photo, there is an existing evergreen screening hedge. One portion of it is taller than the other portion. And after looking at Google Earth maps, we approximate the difference in planting time was about 6 years between the 2 existing hedges on the property. Also, to the right of the photo, you'll see some existing evergreen screening hedge that the Middlesex Commons has planted, as well as that fence that you see is an 8-foot screening fence. So I just wanted to throw that in there, and then we'll move on to a section which cuts through from the north on the left-hand side of the page down through where the Middlesex Commons property is, through the service building toward the south to the leased property that BMW leases from the town. So starting at the Middlesex Common property, between the Middlesex Common condos and our proposed service building is the existing screening hedge. In green is what we estimate to be the approximate height for the trees as of today. And then the dark gray is what we project the trees to be in 2 to 3 years from now, once the building is installed. As you can see, that screening is very substantial on their property. In addition to that, there is an 8-foot screening fence just to the south of those trees. And as you come toward our property down the boulder slope, you can see the dotted line. There's a dotted line, and that's the existing grade. So we are raising the grade ever so slightly in between the service building and our property line. On top, and at grade, we are proposing to plant 10 to 12 foot height green giant arborvitaes. Again, these trees grow 2 to 3 feet per year. And the dark green is what they'll be the height at install. And then the dark gray is what with the projected height at maturity, completely screening the service building from the Middlesex Commons property. In addition to the screening trees, we're proposing, as Mike had said, a parapet wall with a screening fence totaling 8 feet in height above at the level of the parking garage. And then, sorry, rooftop parking. And then all of the light fixtures that are proposed on the rooftop are at or below the parapet fence. So they'll be completely screened from the neighboring property. If you would go to the next slide, please. We provided this information. It's our existing lighting study for the site. Last year, we went out to the site and took some photometric foot candle measurements at the site just to see what the existing conditions were. And with the exception of a few outlier measurements, we found the majority of the light came from Whole Foods parking lot, and it was brighter along the Whole Foods edge and where BMW meets Whole Foods. As you can see in some of the images, the existing light fixtures are angled and actually shine toward the Middlesex Commons property, the neighboring site, which we wanted to avoid with the proposed design. So if you go to the next, so this was our lighting plan that we had submitted. It's a photometrics plan. It measures the foot candle readings and it offers the intensity, the temperature of the light fixtures, which was a request of the letter provided by the ARB board. The proposed light fixtures that are closest to Middlesex property are actually recessed into the ramp that leads up into the rooftop parking. So they're facing away from Middlesex property, and it's about 20 feet. The existing light fixture, the closest existing light fixture is about 2 feet from the property line. So we're actually pulling the light fixtures away from the neighboring property. All of these fixtures are full cutoff, so the light source is actually recessed into the light fixture, and they're dark sky compliant. And I think that pretty much wraps up my presentation. I don't, if we want to move to questions.
Thanks. David Humphrey here. Is there anybody else from BMW that needs to present?
We're all set. We're ready for questions.
Yeah, I will move forward with that. Now, Mr. Gleason, I do just want to respond to one of your comments that you mentioned from the start regarding the use of the rooftop parking. It is certainly, that decision is something up to planning and zoning. However, this presentation is coming to us assuming that you feel that will be approved, and there are aesthetic considerations that we will have the ability to comment on. So while we are not here to say yes or no on the use of the rooftop parking, I think there may be comments on how the aesthetics specific to the rooftop parking and how it impacts the surrounding neighborhood may be improved. So I just wanted to note that before we get into our comments. I will run through the list of board members one more time. So we're going to start with Sean Brown, then David Riley, Allison Hughes, Sherry Green, Alex Lopatinsky, Marianne Castell, Rebecca Morrison, Weldon McCauley, and then myself. So Sean Brown, you're up.
Sean Brown, ARB. There's a lot to absorb in here, but I think one of the things I picked up on the landscape plan presentation was the height, the initial height of the screening trees on the north property line. And my comment would be, I think that in view of the rear of the building, I think those should actually be taller and then, you know, start initially much taller and then start to be landscaped or clipped and pruned, you know, from their 1 year growth as opposed to waiting, you know, 3 years for them to screen the back of the building. My second comment was, again, not being a part of the initial part is, but the, you know, ramp for the, or parking, surface parking, wondering if it shouldn't be on the west side of the building instead of on the north side. But that's an architectural question as far as function and use. I do like the colors that have been chosen for the buildings and the layouts of those. And my last comment is, and again, I missed the other meeting, so I don't have the comment on that one, but why is Mini being serviced here and not up on Post Road? Those are my comments. Thanks.
Dave Riley, ARB member. I'd like to thank everyone for the presentation. I appreciate it. It's well thought out and well presented. Also like to thank Dave Humphrey for reminding everyone involved what the ARB's role is on this. With regard to the overall configuration of the buildings, we have three structures essentially to comment on. I think the proposed addition to the BMW showroom for the Mini, I really have no exception to that. I think on the last presentation we were generally in favor of that, and I think it's a nice contrast between the colors of the BMW and the Mini showrooms. I think it's kind of a dynamic play between the two. With regard to the car wash, my initial thought on that, and I think the last time this was part of the discussion, is whether it should pick up on the materials from one of the buildings. And seeing that I was picking up on the service building materials, it got me thinking is like, well, it's a little closer to the showroom buildings, and is there any compelling reason that, you know, perhaps the lower portion of it, or at least some portion of it, shouldn't pick up on the facade materials of the showroom buildings? However, hearing the presentation and the rationale behind it, I'm a little bit more flexible on that sort of assessment. I would say, though, that, and again, this is sort of an overall sort of commentary, is we have a lot of flat roofs and a lot of roof area that I think is a design opportunity that should be considered from an aesthetic and also an environmental standpoint. Whether, say, a green roof on the car wash would be advantageous, and it would be also aesthetically more pleasing, especially for the parking lot of Whole Foods. And to that end, carrying either a green roof or even solar panels, there's certainly, BMW has a number of electric vehicles, and electric vehicles are going to become much more ubiquitous in terms of their use and just their presence in all of our lives. Whether there's some opportunity to incorporate those sorts of elements into these roofscapes that are visible, particularly the roofscape of the service building. And to that end, I would even suggest, in terms of further buffering, why is there a reason that the two-story portion of the service building couldn't be on the north side of the building, and whether the ramp bisects it or if the ramp even gets flipped? I know that's asking a lot there, but having that and having it with the green roof would give a further softening of that transition to the condominium complex. and also shield, I think, in my opinion, again, not without doing, real studies on it, the lighting that is not shown in any of the renderings, which would be nice to see those light fixtures in the renderings. That's something that it's an architectural element, and even a rendering showing a night condition would have been advantageous. The building section was a very informative drawing when it was presented, and I wish it would have been in our packets, because that drawing of itself was really pulled together a lot of these elements that are being discussed on a number of different levels. And that is a critical drawing that, for future reference, is, I think, a necessary element in any packet that's given to the ARB for a project of this scope. So those are my comments for what they are. But the service building is the dominant building on the site, and it is a large mass, and there's been attempts to break up that mass. But I think softening of the mass and making the transition from the north properties to that can be looked at a little bit more, I guess, sensitively. Thank you.
Allison Hughes, ARB. David, you brought up some really good points. I support your thoughts of using possibly a green roof. I think that's a great idea. Other than that, I'm going to defer my time to our landscape experts here.
Sherry Green, ARB. I am not the landscape expert, but I do have, I'd like to follow up on what Sean said about putting in larger arborvitaes. I don't know how, because I'm not a landscape expert, I don't know what the ultimate height is of these arborvitaes. And I'm sure that the neighbors would prefer to have those fully grown rather than waiting 2 or 3 years to soften that area. That's one comment. The other comment I have is I find this car wash somewhat of an eyesore, not the design. I would like to see the materials of the service, the darker materials used on the outside of the service building where it says mini, I guess it's the mini building, maybe use those darker materials to diminish this. I think when you look up the driveway, it's just kind of an eyesore there. I'd like to see that diminished somehow with change of color. My comments.
Alex Lopatinsky, ARB. I do support a lot of what David mentioned. In particular, that section drawing was incredibly helpful to see, and it does explain what the proposed heights of the vegetation is. And I do support also the comment about more mature trees to actually truly screen what the service building will be once this is all built. There are images that were sent to us in our packet digitally that I haven't seen in the presentation tonight, and I unfortunately did not get a paper copy, but there's the before and after view. The before view from Middlesex Commons through some mature arborvitae onto the parking lot, and then the after with the building with some proposed heights of vegetation and arborvitae. I'd like to really understand what that view is about. When is that going to be? When will that really fill in all that vegetation? Is that expected on day 1, or is that expected on year 10? So that's one comment I'd like to better understand. As far as the car wash is concerned, I actually feel that there could be significantly more articulation to the building itself from both the exit and entry sign. There is an eyebrow that's proposed over the side of the building that perhaps some articulation on both the entrance and exit sign, which on the exit side you actually see, as Sherry explained, going up the driveway. Right now it looks like a car wash building, a box. So I do think there's some aesthetic articulation to the architecture there that could be explored a little bit more carefully. And I also agree with David on the massing of the building. A service building itself could, again, use a little bit more careful exploration of the aesthetics on that building itself. And that's it for me.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB member. I guess I'm a little bit worried about allowing a rooftop parking structure and what that might entail in the future for the town. That's number one. And then number two, I just worry about, I understand the lighting, but also the noise. If this is a service building and the cars are parked on the top, what that noise impact will be. I know that they said it will be minimal, but you know, I don't know if I would be that comfortable if I was one of those people that lived behind it. And like Dave, I really was thinking about the idea of trying to green that roof, or why does that roof have to actually be completely open? Like, could it be open towards the Post Road side and then greened at least a certain percentage of that roof towards the condos? Like, has there been any studies about trying to make that more aesthetically pleasing, at least for half of it? Or why? I also guess I'm questioning the ramp and the ramp location, and also how many cars are currently in the service lot and how many spaces, additional spaces, are provided now that you are proposing rooftop, this rooftop lot, whether all those spaces are needed, or whether, again, whether a portion of that could be covered and have no cars, or whether it could be blocked on half of it. I just feel like we need to keep in mind the people that live in those condos. That's it.
Leslie McCauley, ARB. I have a couple of things I wanted to discuss. The arborvitae is not on the approved parking lot tree list. And you might want to consider removing the Wildflower Meadow, because I don't know what space that is taking to help the nearby residents. By taking out the meadow, you'd make room for a thick hedge of evergreen trees from our parking lot tree list. I'm thinking Picea abies, which is fast growing. You could also do white spruce, Serbian spruce, Juniper virginiana. They're all on our list, with a minimum height of 20 feet tall at the time of planting. And extend the length of the shared property line with Middlesex Commons and return along the Whole Foods shared property line with the same hedge. Our board chair can send you a list of these lists if you don't have them. Secondly, Acer rubrum, which you used 8 times, is also not on our list. You can keep the Gladicia as long as it's planted at a height no less than 20 feet, and add more evergreens, preferably the Picea abies. And in the planting area between the new service area and the existing parking space, the parking lot, you should have another row of evergreens that are planted to the height of at least 20 feet in ground. The front entrance, cornice, which is dogwood, is not on the approved street tree plant list. And also, you can't have any one species planted within 2 tree pits of the same species. You can look to the street tree list within the central business district, as they are appropriate for planting below overhead wires. We are also looking for a more dynamic landscape at the entrance on both sides of the driveway. Curious to know if the existing sign has been approved by the ARB. And finally, if we could have irrigation and a maintenance schedule, pruning and mulch. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. David Humphrey here. Marianne Castell, did you go, or did you get skipped over? You're on mute.
I'm muted. Well, now it's suddenly on me. I've been trying for a long time. All right, I'm trying to think. I've been so distracted trying to get on to be able to talk that I've lost a lot of the gift, unfortunately. But I do think everyone made very good points. And I support.
Marianne, we're having some trouble hearing you. If everybody else can go on mute.
I know I have to. There's a problem. I have a problem here.
Okay, we'll skip over you for now if you're able to work that out, or maybe call in. We can come back to you, but okay.
I don't know what number to call. Anyway, never mind.
It's in your meeting agenda. You can find the call-in number and code.
Okay, I don't see it. All right, thank you.
If you can go on mute in the meantime, that would be great.
I'm trying to get off. I'm trying to get off right now. I think I'm just gonna go off. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave.
Okay, hopefully that solves it. So David Humphrey here. I'm going to run through my comments, and then we'll turn it back over to BMW for responses. So my comments, some of them were shared by their members. We can run through that later, but let's start with a few simple things. So the ground face block for the service building and the car wash, I was hoping that you'd be able to provide an image or photograph of something on a larger scale versus just a small sample. It's such a big part of the building facades, and there's so much of it. It would be great to get a shot of, whether it's from the manufacturer or something to show it on a larger scale. Because it seems the sample is a darker gray than what's shown in the rendering, which is fine, but it would just be good to get a shot of that on a larger scale. If you don't have it already, I think it would be important to get an actual detail or a section of the fence where you're going to use the trellis. That seems like something that's going to be built custom. So I think, again, because of the prominence it has next to or for the adjacent property, something to show what the metal, how the metal posts will be secured, what the fastening will be, what the separation is of, I assume you're going to have trespa panels of, 1 by 6 or 8 or something like that, what the separation is between those panels. Just again, because it's a big part of this architecturally. Soundproofing we had brought up in the last meeting, and I didn't see anything there. Just going to throw that out there, whether there was anything explored related to soundproofing, either for the fence or whether there's going to be anything done for the service building itself within the exterior walls to ensure, minimal sound transmission with the adjacent properties. Okay, so for the landscaping, I was wondering how much light the area next to the ramp gets, because, obviously whatever goes there is going to need some sunlight to grow the way that we're all hoping it will grow quickly. So just want to make sure that's part of the equation, how much sunlight that area gets. The lighting plan, as some of the other board members had mentioned, I think because of the potential impact on the adjacent property here, although it's been stated here and it's shown in the proposed lighting plan study, I think this is important enough to hopefully be able to produce a nighttime rendering, showing in fact that the way that the proposed light fixtures are facing and the way that they're designed, will in fact not have any impact on the existing residential properties next door. The lighting study that shows what I believe are the foot candles surrounding the service building many of them look to be 0 right next to the building. But I'm also wondering, is that 0 at the ground floor at elevation 0, or is that 0 27 feet up? I think it's important. This is a case where, we're close to residences at elevation that is, somewhat equal to the elevation of those lights. So it's not about, what it is at the ground floor, it's what it is at that elevation. So I'd like to just confirm that the foot candles that are shown here on this study, where that reading is taken from. And then also, it appears that this study was done with information from the site plan. And I think it would be helpful to understand what elements were taken into account when this lighting study was done. So obviously, to be able to make these calculations, you have to factor in, whether it's the fencing or the trees or whatever, the surrounding elements that will impact the lighting, to make sure that, there's no, really discrepancy or anything that's not being shown on the lighting plan here. I know that you had mentioned that this lighting study indicated the color and potentially the wattage. I don't know whether that's in the luminaire schedule, whether it's somewhere in the designations for these fixtures, but I think that would be good. And if you could also touch on the statistical area summary, what those numbers represent, I think that would be helpful. And then also thought of this as we were going through some of the other board members, but this lighting study should really also consider a car with their lights on and not just, static fixtures that are on, because, there are going to be points, throughout the day or the year where there are going to be cars up there with lights on that are going to impact, the overall light in that area. And then also the schedule, this was touched on last meeting, and I didn't hear it mentioned. I didn't see it represented anywhere in the packet, but, what is the schedule for when these lights will all be on, or, when some of them will be on? I believe part of them need to be on 24/7, but it'd be important to understand which ones would in fact be on 24/7. Then lastly, similar to a couple other comments about just in general, the mass of the service building, it would be helpful to understand whether there were any other options explored, whether it was moving the ramp to a different location, the kind of the reason behind, where it was positioned on the site, the dimensions, whether some of the parking spots on the rooftop could actually be fit in on the ground floor, which would then, reduce the number of spaces up there if those are approved, because that might be a benefit. Second, some of the comments about, whether there's a way to break up the mass of that service building. One suggestion.
But I'll turn the,
One suggestion I was going to make is along the facade that is adjacent to the residential property, whether the line of fencing, whether there's enough distance in the drive aisle on the roof to set back the line of fencing adjacent to the residential property to allow for a planting strip at that elevation, because many of the comments have been whether the trees that are planted on day one are tall enough to have any effect at all, or whether we have to wait for year 5 for them to get up to a height that may actually screen this building. So either a fully permanent solution, or someone as an intermediate. I think it might be a good solution, again, to have a planting strip on the outside of the fence that would break up that elevation, that would provide some greenery. I second the comments about, potential areas of green roof, whether it's on the second story of the service building or potentially the car wash, just because these are large areas, big mass buildings. Potentially, even whether any type of little bit of trellis structure to overhang some of the parking to screen a little bit. So I think that was it. I will pass it back to BMW to respond to our comments, and then we'll come back for a few minutes to wrap up.
Thank you, everybody. Mike with Claris Construction, representing BMW. Wilder, I'm just going to go through and answer a couple of things here. I know there's probably a couple of things that you want to address as well as Katie. So I'm just going to quickly go through them. I wrote everyone's comments down. Thank you again for everyone, much appreciated. A lot has been said about the massing, especially with David there at the end and at the beginning with potential locations of the ramp, where we put it, where we put the second level of the service building, if we could flip the parking to the other side, and it really just comes down to logistics. It is a site civil design matter, but basically we did explore. We were given programmatic requirements from our client. We explored different options on how we could lay this out on the site, where we could fit it, how we can get traffic. So it's not just a matter of putting the building and everything that's required, but making sure we have room for fire trucks, access around the building. All those things too. So we did a lot of studies, and our civil engineer did a lot, and we assisted with that. Frankly, the flipping of the building and having the ramp on the opposite side of the condos, and having the second floor facing the condos, it doesn't work logistically because we have those overhead doors that are quick access for quick lube and for electronics. That we don't have enough room for another driveway that would be then in between the building and the condo association, and then the required parking would not work out. But we could definitely show some diagrams of how we looked at this. It's been over a year, actually over 2 years of getting to this point, and we thought that this was the best layout for that. Many being serviced there, that's a operations question I think Wilder can get to in a little bit. A lot of comments on the car wash and aesthetics of it. We can appreciate all that. It's kind of that in-between building of what to do with it, and it's a smaller building, and we don't want to make it feel like it's just a car wash and a throwaway. So a lot of little architectural details that were talked about, possibly bringing the overhangs to the front and instead of the sides, or in addition to the sides, is definitely doable. We will definitely look at those. I think one of the comments about it being more muted and not matching, having the opportunity to match the showroom. Again, corporate, we have different masters here, and corporate BMW and Mini want specific areas to look for showroom, for customer contact. It's just the way they talk about it, so customers know where they're supposed to go. So that is a little bit why the building is a little bit more nondescript, because customers aren't actually driving their cars through there. It would just be a service technician doing so. Flat roof opportunities. Yes, we do have a lot of flat roofs here. We can definitely explore some ideas of solar panels. To your point of BMW having a lot of electric vehicles, we prep all of our construction projects to accept solar panels, so that would definitely be something I'd love to look at for this project. As far as the greenery, I don't know. We can look at it to see if we could fit anything on the service building or on the car wash. I don't know if we could. We don't have any excess. There was a comment about parking, and I think maybe there's a one spot delta compared to what the current layout is, and I think Wilder has a little bit more of that information. But we haven't, because we have the rooftop parking, we haven't really increased the amount of parking spots that we have currently at the facility. I apologize that we didn't get the section in to your materials ahead of time. Katie it was her great idea to add it there. We added it at the 11th hour, but I'm glad we did, because clearly that helped you guys understand a lot that was going on between us and the neighbors there. Light fixtures on the renderings, we can certainly look at that and add those to it. Take the ones we have on our lighting plan, add them to our renderings, and do a night rendering. I think that could help you guys understand that. I don't really know specifics on the lighting schedule, But to Wilder's point last meeting, a lot of the lights are on demand. So they're at low levels. Some of them, for security reasons, are at very low levels. And then as you walk by, or if something was happening, lights would come on by individual fixtures, not all of them at once and not 24/7. But Wilder can speak to that a little bit more than I can. Green roof, we talked about a little bit more. There's some planting things here that I'll let Katie address. Sorry about that. Hold on one second. Arborvitae's, car wash, more articulation. Again, we'll definitely take a harder look at the car wash. Can appreciate those architectural comments. Noise. We have acoustics engineer that is, and a traffic engineer. Again, kind of addressed at the beginning, but they are putting together reports on that, on what is there and what will be generated in the future. So hopefully that will shed light on for, again, I think they were aiming to have that. I won't speak for anyone, but I think it was for planning and zoning application. Landscaping questions. And then the ground face block, I apologize, David. You did ask that. I misinterpreted your question the last time. I thought you just wanted a more detailed picture of the actual block. Totally makes sense now. You want an existing photo. Totally understood. We could definitely take care of that for you. But we did try to look at I know there's a lot of massing questions here. Again, it's driven operationally. If we could break up the service department a little bit, put some of the quick bays somewhere else, it really comes down to operations and how to be efficient as a business and not have cars moving all over the site. So if we had a more of an addition to the showroom building where maybe there was quick lube, but now you're segregating your service department team. So our goal with the project from our client, our directive was to get it all under one roof, to make it as efficient as possible so that work can be done as efficiently as possible. And this is the solution we came up with. The sound, one last thing for the sound, it is insulated block, and that we will have another wall inside furred out with insulation from the service department. So that's a giant mast that's going to block the sound from the inside of the service department. The good question on the section of the fencing. It is a frame wall with steel posts. Because we're parking up there, we have the steel posts coming in there. Structural engineers looking at it. We have to restrict, a car bumping into it, no matter how fast or slow it's going, has to resist 6,000 pounds of force. So we have that built in, and that's a frame wall that we could then add insulation inside that. As said before, earlier in my presentation, our original concept was to be more of a fence-like structure with some gaps in it. And as we've evolved with the project, with discussions with our team, it has become more of a solid wall. And we're trying to mimic the fence look. So those posts you see is steel structure coming through, and then we're wrapping it with aluminum to make it look more towards that residential fence. I hope I answered those questions. I know Katie and Wilder have some things they want to comment on too, but I appreciate everyone's comments and look forward to hopefully addressing them for you.
Great. Can I step in? One of the things, and Mike, if you can just pull up the proposed site plan, share your screen, and I'll just talk to that. Because when you look at the building, a lot of you wanted to know, why is the parts department storage on the second floor of this building located away from the condominium? And the answer is, we get deliveries several times a day into the parts department, and those deliveries have to occur where the parts department is located, which is the front of the building. There's also the 6 bays that you have that are for technical and oil that are to the left of the parts department. Those need access. And as Mike said, there isn't room. The storage for the parts department logically needs to be above the parts department. And by putting the ramp, we have to have flat space to get to our central doors on the east and west side. So Mike, if you can show those, please. Highlight that on the east side and the west side. So those are the main doors that give us access to the 24 bays that are inside this service building that are not accessed from what would be the south side. So we have 24 bays inside. We have 2 doors that access them, one on the left, one on the right, one on Whole Foods, one towards the town transfer station. The only logical place to put the ramp is after you get past that door on the east side, and then the ramp goes up there's a little landing, and you make a 90-degree turn, come up, there's another landing, and you turn into the parking lot. So that the ramp is dictated by the activities that this building, the functions of this building has. And so the second, it's just not logical to try and put the parts storage on the north side. Just isn't going to work. The other thing is we do need the 37 parking spaces that are on this rooftop. There are currently 73 parking spaces on this lot. And a car wash, if you'll go to the original plan, the existing plan, you have a service building that has a car wash in it, which is loud. The blowers from that car wash are very loud, I'm informed. And it also has a vacuum line. And there are about 140 cars, 75 service vehicles, and 70 loaners that go through each of those lines once a day. So that's a total of 145 cars times 2 is 390 trips, vehicle trips, going through that car wash and the vacuum line. That's a lot of noise right near the parking lot, the condos. And that noise under the new plan is going to be moved much closer to the service area where it will be shielded by the Whole Foods parking lot, which is 6 to 8 feet higher. And that will be, so we think that's going to be a significant improvement and reduction in noise. And the preliminary results we're getting confirm that. So we don't have these reports finalized, they're not ready, but when we get to P&Z, we're pretty confident we will have those questions or concerns addressed. As to, let's see, mini service. Mini service is transferring down here because it's a more effective way to allocate the resources. What was not, it may not have been clear, but I think I said it in the application, the pre-owned BMW sales and all of their sales force and the managers are going up to the Mini dealership on the Post Road. That actually reduces the number of employees. When we get done, we expect the number of employees to be reduced slightly with the changes that are being made. So, but we still need the, we have one more car basically proposed, and so that explains why Mini service is going to be here. And we anticipate that the Mini service will be basically the same when we're done and operational, because cars today are far more technological wonders. They can be treated and repaired over the internet. And that's where BMW is going. And so that we anticipate when this service facility opens, we will still be servicing 75 cars a day, but it will include the Minis that are sold from the dealership up on exit 13, as well as the BMWs. So let me just see if I had any other notes. Talked about that. Rooftop parking was approved over 4 years ago, and the ARB approved rooftop parking at the Walgreens in the Heights. So you may not have been on the commission when this was approved 4 years ago or 3 years ago, but this is not the first application where rooftop parking has been proposed. I believe it's the second in town. So there's a precedent, and obviously you are right to be concerned about the impact that this may have on the neighbors. We are confident that the Planning and Zoning Commission will be able to make the finding they're required to make under the reg, that the rooftop parking will have no negative impact on adjacent neighboring properties. That's in the regulation, and it's a very high standard. And we believe that when we're done with our presentation to P&Z, they will be able to readily make that finding. So in terms of, let me just think if I see anything else. Oh, when lights go on and off, none of the lights are scheduled for 24/7. They don't happen, doesn't happen now. It's not going to happen when we're done. In terms of details, we don't have those right now, but we are, I do know that we intend that the rooftop parking would be used primarily by service employees. So there's no reason for there to be anything up there essentially after 7 p.m. at night. Those lights, and then the two-story building itself is going to screen the condo's view of the balance of our lot. We're happy to provide you with a more detailed lighting plan and that night rendering. But I think I would hope that those explanations are enough. Let me just keep going. I think that's it for me.
We really. Is there anything else you want to address? Because we're going over time here. I just want to move this along.
Katie needs to address the landscaping.
Hi, Katie Haas from William Kenny Associates representing BMW. Thank you everyone for your comments. Leslie, especially your comments. Thank you. Sean, Ron, a few people had questions just about that the trees should be taller. We'd be happy to look at this to propose larger specimens between the service building and the Middlesex Commons property. I'm pleased that the section helped with the understanding the proposed plan. Will definitely include it on any revisions that we submit. Alex, to answer your question, will the proposed vegetation fill in? We did provide a little bit of information on that. We projected that the proposed arborvitae at the current height that they would be installed would be about 8 to 9 years for them to completely screen the. Actually, would you mind going to our section, Mike? Could you do that? Until they completely, the proposed arborvitae on our property completely blocked out the service building, while the existing arborvitae on the Middlesex Commons property would block the service building within 2 to 3 years, which is when the service building would be built. Leslie, to jump into your comments, we note that the arborvitae is not on the approved parking lot tree list. However, the neighbors do have existing green giant arborvitae on their property, so trying to link the aesthetics of the two properties is why we chose to propose it. Also, it is a very fast-growing tree, very robust, very commonly used for screening, which is why we chose to use that tree. We hope that maybe you would find that acceptable, but we'd be pleased to switch it to selected trees from the parking lot list. Regarding the Wildflower Meadow, we proposed the Wildflower Meadow just to leave access and maintenance for the screening trees, because we will want to make sure they're maintained over time so they do their job. We'd be pleased again to look at the installing larger trees. And we do propose a few returning on the east side of the ramp headed up to the service building, but we can certainly look at adding more in that location. The Acer rubrum that we have proposed is not on the parking lot tree list, however, it is on the street tree list. We chose the Acer rubrum for the area just strictly because of the use of this property. The parking lot trees, the native parking lot tree that's a deciduous tree is sweet gum, and sweet gum does have large seed pods that fall and can create a big mess. So we thought that the Acer rubrum was a little more, it fit a little better with the use of the space, because there are going to be new cars moving in and out of these buildings. And then and we'll look into adding another row of evergreen trees. Maybe if you can just jump back on, and can you just clarify again where you would like to see that? And we'd be happy to review the street tree plantings along Ledge Road. Again, we chose the Cornus Florida just because sticking to a native flowering tree, but we'd be pleased to put one of your selected street trees for that area. I think, and you commented on more dynamic landscaping along the driveway. We're really not touching any other area except for around the stormwater wetland, but we'd be pleased to enhance that if you think it needs to be. And then David Humphrey, to answer your question, we don't have the specifics on exactly how much sunlight impacts that area. It's something we can look at. It is on the north side of the building, so it is going to be a little bit shadier. But the green giant arborvitaes we've seen them and can be successful in shadier environments as well. The photometrics study shows the foot candles at the ground level, but also at the rooftop level. So all the roof fixtures are measured at the rooftop elevation, or at the elevation that they are, the mounted height. And our luminaire schedule does list all of the specifications for the light fixtures. That's where you'll find it. I think that's the majority of the questions, and be happy to pass it off. Thank you very much again to everyone for your feedback and comments.
Let me add one other
Okay,
thing, if I can, David. Wilder Gleason, sorry.
Go ahead.
The existing signage has all been approved by A and/or the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Sorry, David Humphrey, you said the existing signage?
Yeah, the existing signage in the front, the BMW of Darien sign on the top and the pole sign in the front have all been approved by ARB and/or the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, David Humphrey here, but any new signage would have to be reviewed.
Absolutely.
Is that understood?
We understand that, and signage is not part of this package at this point.
Correct, okay. Thank you for that. Just very quickly turn it back to any ARB members who want to make additional comments. Sean Brown, we'll start with you.
I had a quick question on the car wash. Again, I missed the last review on this, but in looking at the site plan and reflecting on the comments about functionality, I'm kind of wondering if you can't move that car wash down behind the proposed addition, either against the, the south side property line or into that first row of parking spaces, and swap your parking spaces, for the car wash that you're eliminating up on the north side, move it down to the south side. So you've moved it away from the residence, you've moved it away from Whole Foods, and you can put it in behind the proposed addition. Just a comment.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Rebecca?
I still go back to Rebecca Morrison, ARB. I still go back to the idea of the rooftop parking. As far as I know, and granted, I'm new with ARB, but I don't believe that ARB has ever allowed rooftop parking. I know that this was considered with David Geneviese's project, and it was not a favorable request. And I don't believe that Walgreens, it was ever discussed either. Maybe it was discussed with zoning, but I don't think it was discussed with ARB at all. And I just go back to the fact that it's going to be noisy. And if I owned one of those condos that faced that lot, I wouldn't be so happy. And that some sort of a green roof or some way to break up that rooftop parking so that they're not staring at a car, within feet of their property. And it's a residential property. It's not Walgreens. It's just not appropriate as far as I'm concerned. It needs to be it needs to be rethought in a different format.
So David Humphrey here, as I think we all agree and understand, the decision on rooftop parking, yes or no, is up to planning and zoning. It is up to us to look at the aesthetics that are related to that rooftop parking. And I think that's where many of our comments are focused. Before I kind of try to summarize and wrap up, anybody else?
Am I on? Is my mic on? No.
Sure. Marianne, would you like to go?
No, just quickly, I've been here all day, all evening, and I finally got it straightened out. I just wanted to make one quick last comment. I'm sorry. I wanted to say that breaking up the rooftop with some sort of a sound and aesthetic barrier for I support that wholly in terms of the rooftop parking. And I think that your evergreen tree or large evergreen trees are more important than the pin oaks that I seem to remember. I've lost all the stuff in between because I've missed a lot of stuff. So I'm sorry to repeat, but this is my initial feeling right now that you need more evergreenery, large evergreen. And pin oaks lose their leaves. And there are a lot of leaves in them to begin with to clean up. So I would address whatever people have been saying about the landscaping that relates to the condos. And that's basically what I'm saying. And I think the sound and making something aesthetic and green on the roof somehow would be a very advantageous and very adventurous thing to do. And I think it might be an interesting thing to try. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Leslie?
Hi, Leslie McCauley, ARB. If you can see this photo, I was at the site today. There's a sign right there, and that's the one I was wondering if it had been approved by the ARB. Secondly, to respond to Katie Haas, thank you. We will ask that you stay strict to our tree lists. So no arborvitae, no dogwoods at the front. And the Acer rubrum is on the list, but in the notes section, it says that it's a gateway tree. So you have to come to us to use it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Anyone else? No, okay. So David Humphrey here. Going to try and wrap up. First of all, thank you to everyone who presented from BMW. Thank you for the additional documentation that was provided. The amount of documentation, the thought that went into the changes that were made and trying to incorporate, our comments, especially considering the size and scale of this development and the many different factors that impact the design. There's clearly a few main themes where our comments are being focused. I'll try to sum up what additional information we would like to get back to hopefully get to the point where we can get to a favorable report, and this will all be detailed in a letter to you. But just before we close out, related to lighting, I think a night rendering is important. It sounds like that's a possibility and something that should be provided, along with I think a kind of a finalized lighting schedule showing specifically what fixtures will be 24/7 and which will be on and off. And then related to the elevations of the foot candles, I do think it's important enough to show the calculation at the elevation of the adjacent structure to make sure that we're all clear what that value would be, since in this case, the calculation at the ground floor, doesn't really have that much meaning. So again, lighting, night rendering, light schedule, and then another calculation of foot candles at the elevations. I think an option, many people mentioned green roof or solar panels. I think that's something that can be looked at, whether that's a possibility. Either one of those, I think, will go a long way in breaking up the massing, kind of improving the overall design, since this will be seen from above in some cases. Car wash comments, potentially the location, as Sean Brown mentioned at the end there. A couple easy ones, photo of the block, the fence detail or a little bit more information, a section through that fence. That section, as we've talked about, was very helpful. I think that is important enough. If we can also have the section lengthwise on the north facade, because I believe there's a grade change there. So the section that was shown shows trees growing at an elevation that I think is at least a few feet higher than what it is on the other side of the building. So, you know, we're talking about at least a year of growth here. So if we could see a section along that back facade to understand, you know, at what elevation these trees would actually be planted at, and then if we can increase the height of those, that will be helpful. And I think if it's possible, you know, the renderings are great, but they're a little deceptive in that, not deceptive, but they're only accurate for a certain portion of the year. So in winter, there's no leaves on many of those trees. So if there's a way to show, you know, the arborvitaes, which, you know, will hold their leaves versus some of the others which are going to drop them, to give a realistic look of what this would look like in the wintertime when there's going to be less natural screening. And then lastly, I would like to again request one option for some sort of planting strip or planters at the north facade at the level of the parking, the rooftop parking. I think that may be, you know, a relatively easy solution if the dimensions allow it, to break up that facade, to add some greenery along that facade. And it may actually help with the solution that you need to find about, you know, the strength of that fencing. It might, you know, might allow you to do something structurally where there's less of an issue there, where you have a little bit of a buffer between, you know, the edge of the exterior wall and where the cars would actually be parked. So that may do a couple things for you there. So again, this will be provided in a letter, but wanted to sum up before we close out. Thank you everybody for your time tonight. We will end with that.
Thank you very much.
This is Liz Geiger, Dave Humphrey.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that. Okay, we got to move on, guys. I appreciate it. We'll get a letter to those guys out. All right, we got to continue on here.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Approval of minutes for November 17th. Did everybody look at it? Can I get raised hands if everybody approves? All right, any hands raised for anyone who doesn't approve? Any changes? Terrific. Okay, minutes are approved. Since this is a special meeting, no other business will be considered. I'd like to give one more thanks to Dave Humphrey, who did an amazing job running that meeting. Absolutely terrific, Dave. All right. Applause all around. Look at that. Really proud of you, Dave. That was a hard meeting to summarize. A lot going on there. Really good job. And great job to all you board members for really coming with your homework. It was a bummer not for me to be able to participate. But thanks, guys, and we'll see you in January. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. It's
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, we're closing the meeting. Fred, you can go off recording. Thank you.